has met regularly, virtually of course, to take forward the work that has been entrusted to it. They have monitored recommendations from the previous ACC, as well as considering new issues that have been proposed, and in particular the impact that COVID-19 has had. One of the major projects that the Standing Committee has been a part of is the review and restructure of the Anglican Communion Office. And this has been finished so that the focus is on the core staff at the ACO to better support the instruments of the communion. Another key event for the Standing Committee has been appointing the new Secretary General of the Anglican Communion and seeing through the transition from the outgoing Secretary General, Archbishop Josiah Adewufiron, to Bishop Anthony Poco. We have also been involved in the approval and creation of new provinces since ACC-17. We have created two: the province of Alexandria and IAMA, which is an acronym for the Anglican Church of Mozambique and Angola. The Anglican Church of Mozambique and Angola had a virtual inauguration due to COVID pandemic. There have been a progress with the work with the Church of Ceylon, who are awaiting the creation of the third diocese before becoming a new province. The Synod of the Church of England decided in July 2022 to increase the number of representatives from the Anglican Communion to the Canterbury Crown Nomination Commission to select the next Archbishop of Canterbury from 1 to 5 representatives. The Synod requested that these representatives should include laity, clergy, and bishops, as well as being balanced in age and gender. The Anglican Communion will need to discuss and agree on the mechanism for selecting these representatives, and the Standing Committee recommends that the instrument to explore this would be the ACC itself. This would therefore be an issue that the new Standing Committee will take forward, and will look into this process as and when the need arises. As the Standing Committee, we met all day last Saturday before the commencement of this meeting. We look at the final preparations for ACC-18. We also had an update on human resources. We were very glad to hear that the management has completed all recent staff recruitment at the Anglican Communion Office. We also received an update from the Inter-Anglican Finance and Administration Committee. We look forward to the elections of the new Standing Committee, which will take place in a few days' time here in this conference. I now would like to hand over to our Vice Chair, Canon Maggie Swinson, who will give a short update on the Inter-Anglican Finance and Administration Committee.
Thank you, Archbishop Paul. I'm hoping that a slide is going to come up, she says. But it might not. So I will talk to this slide, and at some point, hopefully, you might see it. We have been, as the ACC, incredibly grateful for the contributions that the provinces of the Communion make each year to the work of the Communion and the support of the Communion Office. We do understand that some provinces are much better resourced than other provinces. However, during the last 4 years, the number of provinces contributing has decreased from 31 in 2018 to 22 in 2022. The pandemic has had an effect on fundraising and on our resources and finances. The total income for the ACC fell 17% between 2019 and 2021 during the pandemic, but we have seen some recovery of that in 2022. So you'll see that income line there going down quite significantly, but showing some improvement when we reach 2022. We hope that we will be in a position to sustain that. And we are fortunate that due to good management in the past, we have been able to weather that storm. And of course, our expenditure also decreased during that time, and we took advantage of the support available from the British government in terms of furlough for our staff, which was very helpful. If I could have the next slide, please. Thank you very much. So in 2022, this is what our expenditure looks like. The main objective of the ACO is to support the instruments of communion. This includes hosting primates meetings and meetings of the ACC, such as this one we're in now. And that takes up about 40% of our expenditure. The rest is pretty well split between ecumenical dialogues and relationships with other Christian denominations, mission, gender justice and support for networks and commissions, theological education, and representing the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Communion at the United Nations. So you can see that all there. If you'd like to move to the next slide, please. So in 2023, what do we think is going to look like? The changes as a result of the review of the structure of the staffing at the communion offices have been implemented, and more of the mission work that is undertaken will be completed through commissions and networks. Theological education will also move to the new Commission for Theological Education in the Anglican Communion. The big change on here is you'll see a big chunk of green for Episcopal ministry. So Joe, give us a wave. This is the work that Joe is going to be taking on as we, and we'll hear more about that work. But this funding for this work is coming from the Lambeth Conference Company, and that funding is ring-fenced. But it will be a substantial contribution through the ACO in the coming period of time. So you'll see from that picture, and particularly from that income slide, that we have some challenges ahead. Our budget for 2023 was agreed by the Standing Committee. It is a deficit budget because we will have some costs from this meeting which will need to be absorbed into that budget. And we have no certainty about that big chunk of income that comes in terms of contributions from member churches. It is a risk area for us. At the recent meeting on Saturday of the Finance Committee, we made a commitment that we will be asking the next Standing Committee to take very seriously looking at how we can develop a more sustainable funding model, one which leaves us less reliant on member church donations, because we are still in a period of great unknown about how finances are going to be across the communion. There isn't a single province in the communion that will not still be feeling the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that may go on for some years. we don't know what the future is going to look like. So that will be a major job for the Standing Committee going forward, to look at ways of funding the work of the ACO, not without those contributions. Those contributions are really important because they are part of our ownership as provinces of the work that is being done in our name by the Communion. So those contributions are really important, but we need to be less dependent on those as our main or even almost sole source of income. So we are very thankful for the funds that come through from Compass Rose. Those help us to do a lot of work. We're thankful for other grants that we receive, but we do need to do that, and that's going to be quite a task for the new Standing Committee. So I've changed seats now, so I'm back to chairing the session rather than being the chair of the Finance Committee. So the next thing, I would invite Bishop Anthony to come and give us an update on resolutions.
Thank you very much, Maggie. Thank you. In the documents that were circulated for this meeting, you will have all received a review with progress reporting from the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Secretary General on the resolutions from ACC-18. We have used a traffic light system to note progress on any actions that have been undertaken. Coming out of ACC-18, there was a longer list of resolutions that covered a wider variety of topics. And you may have noticed that this list is shorter. As discussed at the meeting of the Standing Committee in September 2022, the Standing Committee can only be accountable for the resolutions that are directly addressed to them, as well as the Archbishop of Canterbury and myself as Secretary General. Going forward, there are action points that will be monitored by the ACO and reported on. The other resolutions that are not featured were directed at either commissions, networks, or the Anglican Alliance, and progress is being monitored by them. For more information on this, please contact the respective secretaries or link directors of the commissions and networks. Thank you.
Bishop Anthony is going to not quite go away, but for the purpose of the live stream, he's about to do an update in his position as Secretary General rather than the resolutions. So it's just so that those who are picking it up from the live stream know kind of where we are, that I'm just introducing him again.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Well, it is a pleasure to be here today and speak to you all as my Secretary General's written report, which you have already received, has documented the key updates which I started, since I started my role in September. And so today, what I would like to do is to outline some of the key matters related to the internal workings of the Anglican Communion Office, as well as wider matters related to the communion itself. I'm grateful to those who have supported me as I have settled in, and I am excited for the years that are ahead. In particular, I would like to thank my predecessor, Archbishop Josiah. I learned a great deal from him, his knowledge and wisdom of the communion. I'm also grateful to the ACC Chair, Archbishop Paul, and the Vice Chair, Maggie. Thank you very much for your continued support. Being Secretary General, you can't do this role without the support from the Chair and the Vice Chair, and also members of Standing Committee. I want to thank my colleagues in the office, the directors, and all the staff at the ACO, all of whom have helped me get me up to speed with the wonderful in-depth work of the Anglican Communion Office. I want to give a bit of update on staff. You've already heard from the Vice Chair, something on our staff and the recruitment, actually from the Chair, on the recruitment that we've undertaken. As mentioned in the written report of the Secretary General, we have seen the start of some new directors on our leadership team, as well as some new staff at the ACO. In particular, I want to mention our new Director for Unity, Faith and Order, Dr. Christopher Wells, our Director for Administration and Logistics, Grace Barlow, and Martha Jarvis, the new Anglican Communion Permanent Representative to the United Nations, who takes up her role in March. I believe she'll be joining us either today or tomorrow. Within the Secretary General's office, we have the following. Caroline Thompson, you already met Caroline, my private secretary. Tyler Jordan, Events and Travel Officer. Daniela Donko, Governance Officer. Bishop Joe Bailey Wells, who has just been introduced to you, the new Bishop for Episcopal Ministry in the Anglican Communion. Janet Miles, who continues her role ahead of communications for the Lambeth Conference and Episcopal Ministry. Carrie, who is a support officer for Episcopal Ministry. We are soon recruiting a senior communications manager who has also been appointed subject to the relevant pre-employment checks. We are hoping that they will be able to start in March. I look forward to the important roles that they will all be playing at the Anglican Communion Office as we work to serve the Anglican Communion. We are also seeking to be more intentional to reflect staff's increased experiences in their roles, as well as in their salaries, and considering the annual cost of living salary increase in the United Kingdom. The review of individual job descriptions and corresponding salaries will continue throughout this year, with recommended changes submitted to a standing committee. Staff development and training has been built into this year's personal development review to identify where we can support staff in their professional growth. We also continue to review our working culture and practices to provide an environment in which staff are happy to work while also maintaining a good work-life balance. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, this now includes a hybrid working model between the office and home. On the Anglican Communion Strategic Plan, the ACO Strategic Plan shows its strategic direction and priorities. Following on from the ACO review that was referred to earlier, and post-COVID, we will continue to review the strategic plan. I have been reflecting on how we continue to take this forward over the coming years, both through discussions with colleagues internally and externally, as well as through prayer, as I reflect personally on the calls God has placed, on my heart. I'm pleased to confirm that the outcomes of the Lambeth Conference will also be incorporated into the development and rollout of the strategic plan, and we will update standing committee on the key and relevant amendments to this plan. On a practical level, the offices of the Anglican Communion Office continue to be at St. Andrew's House, and we have renewed the lease from the community of St. Andrew's. In 2022, we renewed this lease at a paper contract for a further 10 years until 2032. We are grateful for that we have an opportunity to be able to use the same facility for the next 10 years. A review of the building use and guest house was requested by standing committee. The interim findings were reported last year, in February last year, and I will now be working with colleagues to complete this review and produce a series of recommendations for the new standing committee's recommendation consideration. I want to speak for the next few minutes on the role of the Anglican Communion Office. It's important to reiterate that the Anglican Communion Office is the secretariat of the Global Anglican Communion. It is not the headquarters of the Anglican Communion. Although we are based in England, we are not part of the Church of England. The Anglican Consultative Council is a registered charity in the United Kingdom, which is a completely separate entity to the Church of England itself. As Secretary General, my immediate line manager is the chair of the Anglican Consultative Council and not the Archbishop of Canterbury. One of our roles as a secretariat is to support and facilitate the 4 instruments of the communion. We therefore consult with the Archbishop of Canterbury as president of the ACC as we prepare for a meeting like this, and also as we organize meetings of the primates and the Lambeth Conference, both of which are convened by the Archbishop of Canterbury. We consult with him in his capacity as primus inter pares, not in his role as primate of all England, and the Church of England is served equally alongside the other 42 provinces of the Anglican Communion. I have been made aware of reports regarding the recent decision by the Church of England's General Synod. I would like to address this so that the facts are clear. The Church of England General Synod voted to maintain its doctrine of marriage while enabling prayers of thanksgiving and dedication, and for God's blessing for people in same-sex relationships to be used in Church of England churches, if they wish to do so. A decision that awaits further clarification and detail at the next meeting of the General Synod in July. The Archbishop of Canterbury has publicly stated that he will not use these prayers because of his role as a focus of unity for the communion. Contrary to some reports that we have seen, this decision is solely by and for the Church of England in its local context. Although the Church of England is seen as the mother church, the decisions from its synod are not binding on any part of the Anglican Communion, nor could they be. The 42 member churches or provinces of the Anglican Communion are autonomous, yet interdependent. There is no central decision-making body in the Anglican Communion. Provinces can make decisions only for themselves. That said, the task and call of full communion with one another is critical, and Anglicans, like all Christians, should seek agreement whenever possible. The question of the structures and instruments of communion that we share deserves continual attention, and as our life together evolves, a point emphasized by the Archbishop of Canterbury in his presidential address on Sunday. Primates meetings. Over the past months, I have been holding one-to-one meetings with primates to connect with them in my new capacity as Secretary General, and more importantly, to better understand their provinces, learning the challenges that they face, and also the hope that they hold for the future of the Anglican Communion. It has really been to me an eye-opening and helpful time as I have met and had conversations with primates. I've also been seeking to ascertain what key events may be taking place in the life of the provinces over the coming months and years, for which my support and/or my physical presence would be helpful. This is actually helping me prioritize my work and travel as I work on my travel plan for the coming months and years. Regarding primates meetings, they are held at varying intervals around the world. The most recent in-person primates meeting was a hybrid meeting at Lambeth Palace in London in March 2022. A virtual primates meeting was held in December 2022. The next in-person primaries meeting is scheduled to take place in Rome in the spring of 2024. I want to turn briefly also and say something on provincial contributions. I know that the Vice Chair referred to that. But I wanted to mention this in my report. The reason is I have been raising the issue of provincial contributions in my calls with primates. Some have expressed concerns at their ability to provide their contributions given the financial strain on their provinces after the pandemic. We may therefore need to review the allocations of contributions from each province to reflect these concerns. For some of the provinces that have not been able to make contributions, may I request the help of you ACC members from these provinces so that your province can make the contribution. Making this contribution is an indication of your commitment to the Anglican Communion family. I would like to reiterate my thanks and appreciation to all the provinces who have consistently made their contributions to the inter-Anglican budget. This week, we received full payment of contributions from one of the provinces for 3 years, for the year 2020, 2021, and 2022. We're really grateful that they would make this contribution at this time. It made my day when I got the information that they have made their contribution. I would also like to thank Campus Royal Society for their faithful support to the Anglican Communion Office, as well as to our other partners who continue to support us. As raised at the Standing Committee on Saturday, I believe it is important for us to have a solid financial position to meet some of the needs within the Anglican Communion. The Lambeth Conference. A key moment in the life of the Anglican Communion last year was the 15th Lambeth Conference. Seeing one of the 4 instruments of the Communion finally happening after 2 years of lockdown and COVID restrictions, and the opportunity to meet face to face was very special. It provided space for prayer, fellowship, and conversations. We welcome 435 bishops, 464 spouses, and 45 ecumenical guests from over 82 countries, exploring the theme of God's church for God's world. And inspired by 1 Peter, the conference challenged us to look outward to the needs of the world and with the hope of the gospel. Many bishops have since then shared with me their joy about the conference and are speaking of a rejuvenated Anglican Communion. Phase 3 of the Lambeth Conference will focus on taking forward the outcomes of the conference, and in particular, the implementation of the Lambeth Calls. A group has been appointed, chaired by Archbishop Julio Murray of Panama, and working alongside Bishop Joe Bailey Wells as part of her role as Bishop for Episcopal Ministry in the Anglican Communion Office. We will hear more from Bishop Joe on this later in the week. Provinces of the Anglican Communion. It's always remarkable to see the communion grow and new provinces being created. I had the privilege of joining the Archbishop of Canterbury to witness the inauguration of the 42nd province of the Anglican Communion, the province of Iama. We attended the provincial celebration in Mozambique last November. While we were there, we also had the privilege of visiting Cabo Delgado, the Cabo Delgado region, to see the work of the Anglican Church in Mozambique with the ecumenical, interfaith, and UN partners in peace building. A very encouraging trip, challenging at times because of the suffering of some of the people, particularly the displaced and the refugees, but a very, very encouraging time while we were there. The Church of Ceylon is working on the creation of a 3rd diocese, which would enable them to become a new province. This is the last remaining requirement that they will need to fulfill. as requested by a standing committee. We are in touch with Lambeth Palace on this matter. Commissions and networks. I'm pleased to see how commissions and networks have flourished despite the global pandemic. And as I mentioned in the opening session yesterday, 3 new commissions have been established since ACC-18. The Science Commission, the Evangelism and Discipleship Commission, and the Commission for Theological Education in the Anglican Communion. There have also been 2 networks that have been revived: the Anglican Health and Community Network and the Anglican Youth Network. The launch of these commissions demonstrates that the aims of the Anglican Communion Review, the Anglican Communion Office Review, and restructuring in 2022 and 2021 are being achieved. Mission work, which previously was done from within the ACO, is now owned and extended by these commissions, whose board memberships are nominated by member churches of the Anglican Communion. It was a huge privilege for me to join the newly constituted Inter-Anglican Standing Commission on Unity, Faith and Order, IASCUFO, when they met in Nairobi in December 2022. I shared with them my vision for their work and outlined some of the things that came out of the last Lambeth conference and the need to be taken forward. Commissions and networks have continued to flourish within the global COVID pandemic, maximizing the opportunities to engage virtually through webinars, newsletters, and resources, including themes of COVID, ecological crisis, and gender governance. Prominence at the Lambeth Conference was given to the work of Safe Church Commission, highlighting the importance of the need for every province to ensure that they have good practices, procedures, and processes in place to keep people safe from harm. There is more work to be done in terms of facilitating greater linguistic diversity and ensuring that commissions and networks reach all parts of the communion. The communion is deeply enriched by and enabled to participate in mission through the commitment, passion, and dedication of hundreds of members who give their time, faith, expertise, funds, stories, and prayers to the commissions and networks. The great 20th century theologian Emil Brunner said that the church exists by mission, just as a fire exists by burning. You will be hearing more from the commissions and networks themselves later on this week. However, I'm encouraged to see the fruitfulness coming out of this, as well as the faithfulness of all those who serve and participate in them. Later on this afternoon, we will be hearing also from Mrs. Caroline Webby, who will be sharing more on the network for bishop spouses that is being born out of the Lambeth Conference journey. I would like to commend Mrs. Welby and the team on the great work that has been done to foster the fellowship between spouses through COVID and beyond the Lambeth Conference. The Anglican Alliance. The Anglican Alliance supported the Communion's global COVID-19 response, which included convening a global task force and regional working groups to identify emerging issues and church models for effective responses, as well as sharing the learning through over 35 regional and global webinars. They also developed an online resource hub with health resources and Bible studies in 4 languages and liaise with the World Health Organizations for briefings for church leaders. They also developed policy and facilitated community advocacy with national governments and the G7 on vaccine equity. I had a number of bishops and primates say how much they appreciated the contribution of the Anglican Alliance during the pandemic. The Communion Forest, a communion-wide movement for ecosystem protection and reforestation, was launched at the 2022 Lambeth Conference. This concept was developed by a working group of eco-bishops, the Anglican Communion Environmental Network, and the Anglican Alliance. The Alliance agreed to take forward the initiative in collaboration with the Anglican Communion Environmental Network as a legacy of the Lambeth Conference. I want to turn now to the recent visit of the Archbishop of Canterbury with the Pope and the Moderator Church of Scotland. I accompanied the Archbishop on this trip about 10 days ago on an ecumenical pilgrimage of peace to South Sudan, alongside Pope Francis and the Moderator of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland. This was an incredibly powerful visit, not least as it took place in my home country of South Sudan, but also to see the strength of the global church when it comes together united in Christ, and that peace, reconciliation, and unity that is possible between those who had previously been in conflict. My prayer, and I believe our prayer, is that this visit will result in real and meaningful peace in South Sudan, so that the suffering of the people is brought to an end. I'm currently planning my official visits for 2023 and 2024. One of my priorities is to visit some of the smaller provinces. I want to ensure that their voices are heard on different issues within the Communion. One of my confirmed visits is a trip to Tanzania in August 2023 with members of Campus Rose Society as part of their annual visits around the Communion. Thank you. I was looking actually at my job description, and one of the things that says that is the role of the Secretary General is to ensure that they visit provinces, especially smaller provinces that are often not heard. And so I want to ensure that I do what I can to do that. I would like to draw your attention to some important matters that were not included in the written report. The EASC4 study on good differentiation is what we hope that all Anglicans are committed to, which includes deepening our fellowship, which is our shared faith and order, and in communion with the See of Canterbury, thinking creatively and faithfully about what Christian communion, koinonia, means as we walk alongside our fellow Christians, but also seeking to allow the necessary space for good and faithful conversations between and among Anglicans, a space that can protect the varying discernments and consciences of all sides, enabling good listening and helping us to make decisions together as much as possible. When we find ourselves continuing to disagree, we should allow one another space. That may permit continuing but respectful conversations without papering over our differences. This gracious giving of room to one another may be called good differentiation, building on the idea of good disagreement that Archbishop Justin has called us to do in recent years. The EASC4 team are here this week, including Bishop Graham Tomlin and Bishop Paul Korir from Kenya. They will be sharing more detail on this study this week. Another thing I wanted to highlight is the working group on strengthening ACC Standing Committee. In 2016, the primates established a task group to work out how bishops could work together. Then, at the 2020 primates meeting in Jordan, they appointed a working group chaired by Archbishop Philip Richardson, who I believe is here, to consider how standing committee might be strengthened so that it better supports the instruments of communion. We will be hearing a bit more from an update from this group. The COVID pandemic slowed down its work, but the group is now hoping to submit a report later this year. They are clear that they are not looking at somehow strengthening the standing committee to create what would in effect become a fifth instrument of communion, but rather at how its role and membership might be refined so that it better connects and facilitates the current instruments of communion. You are invited to the French meeting this evening to hear about the work of the standing committee and feed in your own views. I want to say something very, very briefly on personal emergency fund. Some of you will be aware of the existence of the personal emergency funds, which offers funding for urgent and critical medical treatment where other sources of funding, including diocesan and provincial support, are unavailable. The fund supports serving clergy and full-time church workers and their immediate families. The PEF is flourishing in its new home as part of the Anglican Communion Fund after its transfer from the Anglican Communion Office. Looking forward, at the Lambeth Conference, one of the things that came up was on companion links. 178 bishops signed up to renew or start companion links, joining dioceses together in mission, prayer, and fellowship. The Anglican Communion Office will work to support and facilitate these links as they develop. Looking forward, we always want to grow and enhance the work that we do across the communion. During this week, you will be hearing from colleagues on a variety of different topics. Our role as the ACO supporting instruments of the communion, we do what we can to invest in translation and interpretation. At the Lambeth Conference and much of our work at the ACO, we translate in 4 main languages and at times up to 8 languages and provide interpretation, all either the materials or some of the things that we do. This is a vital part of what we do, but also because as an office that undertakes work across various parts of the world, it's important that we do that. It's a vital part of fueling international dialogue, and it's a major commitment that we want to invest in. We would like to continue to do that, producing high-quality resources that are available to our international audience and ensure that all voices are heard, particularly in an Anglican Communion family, like the Anglican Communion family, which is international. As Secretary General, my role will focus on building relationships and taking forward the outcomes of the 2022 Lambeth Conference as part of Phase 3 group. I remind myself of the call that God has placed upon us as the Anglican Communion Office to support, facilitate, and serve the instruments of the communion. We are living at a time of great need, and we can often feel overwhelmed by the scale of the world's problems, as well as some of the challenges we face as a communion. But I remember that with God on our side, no challenge we face is unsurmountable. I dig deep into the passionate belief in the role that our global network of churches can play in sharing the gospel and bringing hope to the world. All of this is done under the guidance of the Standing Committee with financial oversight made by the Inter-Anglican Finance and Administration Committee. I thank each and every one of you for the part that you play to extend God's mission to the communion and the support that you continue to give us at the Anglican Communion Office. Thank you very much for listening, and now I will hand over back to the Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Bishop Anthony. Could you come back for a moment, please? We will be moving at 3:15 on to doing some work around networks and commissions, but we have got a few minutes before we reach that point. So if anybody has got any questions for the Secretary General. I think we can take a few questions if there are any. It'd be a shame to lose the opportunity. Yes, you'll need to come somewhere where you can be heard. Is there another microphone? I'm going to cause trouble here, aren't I? There's nothing new there then. I'll bring the microphone over. Please give us your name and your province and then ask your question.
My name is Maimbo, Primate of Tanzania and the Bishop of Tanga. Mine is not a question, it's just a matter of appreciation and my warm welcome to the General Secretary to Tanzania and the Compass Rose. Thank you very much for your honor.
Any other questions for Bishop Anthony?
Thank you. My name is Andrew Koo from the province of Southeast Asia. My question has to do with the United Nations office or representation from the Archbishop of Canterbury. What are there any specific agenda or things that we hope to achieve using that particular avenue? Thank you.
Now I'm going to leave it to the Secretary General. And I'm going to carry the microphone about. Oh, he needs it. No, sit down. You're chairing. We'll take two questions. Oh, there's one there.
Grace. Okay. You can look after that one. Your Grace, take that from Grace. I needed to say that. The environment is a key thing that is important, but also representation and also ensuring that our voice is heard. The previous director and colleagues have worked very, very hard to bring the Anglican Communion as well as other churches to a level in which there is a lot of respect now within the United Nations. And having been to Mozambique, we saw that, where the fact that what we are doing at the local level was appreciated by the United Nations. So those are some of the key things that I will consider. Also, there are a number of meetings that do happen, and our UN office does that. The COP meetings, we are also playing an important role. The recent one in Egypt, we had a very high-level delegation that represented us from across the Communion. So there are aspects of work like that. We are really looking forward to scaling up and ensuring that the regions are all covered in terms of ensuring the work of the UN. Now, I don't know whether our UN person, also the Archbishop's personal representative, whether you want to say something on your role with the Secretary General of the United Nations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I was just going to say I am on the easily remembered title of United Nations Secretary General's High-Level Advisory Panel on Mediation. It just trips off the tongue. And if the translators can do that one, it's a triumph. But I'm on that, which is I'm the only religious figure on that. The rest of them are sort of presidents and prime ministers and foreign ministers and that. And that has given me good links with the Secretary General. And, we've got a very good reputation there. So. And that's largely thanks to the work of this office. And I've now been invited to address the Security Council twice. So it's probably better than it's been in a long time. I take no credit for that at all. It's very much down to Jack, who was our last representative, and Martha is just extraordinary, as you will see later this week when she comes. Next question.
Yep.
Your Grace.
Thank you, Grace. Mine, I'm Ezekiel Kondo, Primate of Sudan and Bishop of Khartoum. Mine is not a question, but just appreciation. You're talking about the personal emergency fund. And right now I have an assistant bishop who is the assistant bishop for Khartoum, who is sick and is in Egypt, has been there now for 4 months, and it has been supported by this fund. So I want really to appreciate this very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Priscilla Shaw from the Anglican Church of Canada. I just wanted to ask and put in a bid for equal representation of genders on those new commissions. Thank you.
Yes, just to say that I'm not sure whether Mandy is here, our colleague Mandy. Yes, she is here. She always reminds us of the one of the resolutions of ACC, I think is resolution 1331. So yes, we are definitely factoring that in. When it comes to committees where we have the authority to be able to make appointments, yes, that's possible. There are things that are done through election that, of course, it's hard for us to. But when it comes to appointment of commissions, it's done in appointment of members of commissions done in consultation with the Archbishop of Canterbury. Appointment of the chairs of these commissions is done by the Archbishop in consultation with the Secretary General of the Anglican Communion. So within that, I'm sure that we will do what we can to follow our own resolution 1331.
This is the last question now.
Good afternoon. Canon Annette Buchanan from the Episcopal Church USA. I just wanted to ask about the priority of youth and young adults initiative across ACC. I didn't hear that in your report, and perhaps it's in one of the networks or commission, but as you know, the youth are the present as well as the future, and having them involved in this body and other instruments I think will be very important. Thank you so much for your report.
Okay. Yesterday, I believe the Vice Chair did refer to that, but I want to add this to say that at the last ACC, a decision was made to ensure that we actually incorporate youth as members of standing committee, and we are committed to do that. I've had regular contact with the youth reps, and I'm hoping to even have further conversations with Clifton. I think while he's here, as again an indication of what we do. I think it's also important that as we identify members, and I will call upon those of you who have the responsibility of nominating, appointing, using your synod to bring members to the ACC, that you factor in youth as well as ensuring that there is gender representation. I think it's important that we do that. So we play our role, but at the ACO we'll do what we can to ensure that indeed youth are taken very. I used to be a youth worker, so definitely I won't forget that.
Thank you very much. We've got a red light on this microphone, so I suspect that may mean that we're going to need to change a battery. I'm just saying. Thank you very much, Bishop Anthony. I've swapped onto this one. Thank you. And now it's my great pleasure. I'd suggest you all just at least stand up, turn round and sit down, and then we will be ready for a short session now, which Rachel Parry will be introducing. So Rachel, do come up. This is Rachel's first ACC meeting. She's one of our, not new, but newer members of the team at the ACO. Okay, would you like to sit down now, please? Thank you very much. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you. Warm greetings to you all. Isn't it a joy and a privilege to be here? I'm honoured to have an opportunity to address the ACC-18 to highlight and celebrate the commissions and networks of the Anglican Communion. My name's Rachel Parry, and my role is to support the commissions and networks of the Anglican Communion. Commissions and networks embrace the whole communion, connect across the regions, and as such are a visible sign of unity. They live out the gospel in their work, which reflects all the 5 marks of mission, and they are a crucial web of multilateral partnerships between bishops, clergy, and lay. They ensure that our diverse and multilingual contexts underpin the mission of the communion and enable collaboration between provinces. They live out the reality of our interdependence in the body of Christ and are a deep expression of our yearning for fellowship, mutuality, learning, and solidarity, and joining in with what God is already doing together. Many of you will know that there is a long tradition of commissions and networks being present at meetings of the ACC. As I was reminded yesterday by a long-standing network leader, ACC members, rightly, come and go, while commissions and networks keep coming back. And indeed, many ACC members are also members of commissions and networks, which is wonderful. Even some ACC standing committee members are members of commissions and networks. So throughout this week, contributions from commissions and networks are integrated across the programme, which has already begun this morning, so that the focus and mission is part of shaping the conference theme of the 5 marks of mission. As you know, a number of representatives of commissions and networks are already here. You've heard from some this morning, and also more will be arriving throughout the week. So there will be ongoing opportunities to follow up areas that you may wish to know about more. You will have seen that there are some resources outside in the coffee area. We were all, of course, limited with what we could bring in our suitcases, so it just shows a glimpse of the big picture. I want to take this opportunity to pay tribute to all commission and network members. It is through their dedication and hard work, their commitment and passion, and their vital contributions in energizing, leading, and collaborating across the communion that commissions and networks are enabled to be creative expressions of mission. You inspire and challenge us with what is possible when we join hands across the communion. For all ACC members, please can I encourage you to seek out commission and network members this week to find out more, and feel free to ask me too. As was already mentioned yesterday in Bishop Anthony's speech, there are some other new networks which are becoming established. You will hear more about the Anglican Schools Network tomorrow. For now, it is my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Caroline Welby, who will come and share about one of the newest networks being created.
And we're on a bit of a race with the pairing of the thing. Have you got some slides? There's a bit of a race on to see whether we can get the computer paired and therefore get the visuals on the screen, I think.
You might have to...
I saw a little message at the bottom saying it was pairing.
You might have to suffer me just speaking. I will try and be quick. But hopefully, you have already seen some photographs of the spouses at the Lambeth Conference. It's a real pleasure to be able to reflect with you a bit on the experience of the conference for spouses, and to talk about the Spouses Network. You may or may not know that in the past, spouses have come to the Lambeth Conference but have attended a separate spouses conference which ran alongside. And there wasn't very much overlap. Having visited much of the communion since he became Archbishop, and I have had the privilege often to go with him, Archbishop Justin decided to invite spouses to attend the conference along with bishops. And that is in recognition of the enormous responsibilities and burdens that many shoulder, and the huge contribution to the life of the church that they bring. And also in recognition and appreciation of the cost that episcopal ministry, and might I say also clergy ministry, has on the family, something which is very, very often borne principally by the spouse. 464 spouses, as Bishop Anthony has already said, took part in the Lambeth Conference, alongside 635 bishops. And the spouses were able to participate in worship services, Bible expositions, plenary sessions, and seminars on a wide range of topics. We also met in our own venue, and as we gathered, it felt a little bit like a foretaste of heaven. Sure, we had a problem with language, but we didn't know one another well. We did not understand one another's cultures. We did not know what kind of church one another came from or what one another's positions were on certain issues. But we were linked by a love for Christ and therefore a love for one another. And we came willing and prepared to learn from one another and to grow closer to one another. As far as language groups allowed, spouses were in cross-provincial table groups from the beginning of the spouses' retreat, and they remained in those groups throughout the daily Bible studies and the plenaries throughout the week. And that meant we had an opportunity to get to know one another well and to share more closely. And in many cases, the fellowship has continued via table groups, via WhatsApp groups from the tables and email. And informal networking is already taking place. And at those times when bishops were in their business sessions, spouses participated in a series of strengthening sessions that were created just for them, for shared learning and training. They were structured around three themes: leadership, community, action, and personal well-being. And those resources that were developed and given and shared at the Lambeth Conference were available for spouses to use with others when they returned home. One of our English spouses commented at the end of the conference that she wished she had known what the Lambeth Conference would be like beforehand. And then she said, "I know you tried to tell me. It is hard to describe something which is outside most people's experience. But the Lambeth Conference was transformative for many spouses. Through attending the conference, spouses gained a sense of connectedness and a greater awareness of the Anglican Communion." That is what that spouse was talking about. And they experienced the potential for support and encouragement from other spouses. How do we continue that sense of connectedness and support? So as part of phase 3, the implementation phase of the Lambeth Conference, the ACC Standing Committee has approved the formation of a network of bishop spouses in the Anglican Communion. And the network will seek to encourage and equip by helping spouses to connect within provinces. Some of this work began before the conference in phase 1 with what we called our global conversations. If you were keen-eyed, you would have seen a picture of many spouses on Zoom, and helping spouses to connect across provinces to continue that conversation. And really important, sharing learning and other resources to equip spouses for life and ministry and the roles they take on. The network will be of spouses and for spouses, and will look to work with other agencies, including the Mothers Union, Women on the Front Line, Anglican Alliance, and the other networks. An interim working group is being established as we speak, and that will do two things. It will consult spouses in different provinces, and it will also seek to determine our aims and purpose more specifically, so that we can launch the Spouses Network in the summer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to those who managed to get the slides up on the screen. It's a challenge that happens in many parish churches on a weekly basis, and it's quite stressful if you're the person at the end who's trying to do it and you feel that stress of, it's not happened yet, oh no, oh no. I would like to encourage you that when people are in that position, it doesn't help if you go and try and talk to them. Just let them be and let them focus. It's very my husband does it at church. It's a very stressful job. It's the most stressful thing he does is the slides on Sundays. Before we go to tea, I have a notice from Darren. Please note that if you want to submit a resolution on the first or second mark of mission, so that's yesterday's discussions and today's discussions, including the ones we haven't finished having yet today, then the deadline for that is 8 p.m. So 8 p.m. for any resolutions on today's business or yesterday's business. So I invite you now to go and have some refreshment. We will start promptly at 4 o'clock. So even if there's only 3 people in the room, we will start at 4 o'clock. Okay?